Here's an illustration of one event that he was involved in back when there was a extraterrestrial vehicle that crashed and then ultimately ended up at Lawton, Oklahoma, near Fort Sill. This man has been in a skiff with these objects. These illustrations are based on his direct testimony and hours of discussions since 2016. Here is a small extraterrestrial body, about 39 inches long, that was retrieved in that operation. There are extraterrestrials of various sizes. The last known count I had of different civilizations involved with this, about 60 to 70 in that range, and I think there could be more. Next. This is one of the underground command centers that he was assigned to from the Pentagon. He was with Technical Management Office and then some other offices and investigated some criminal activities that occurred with a 3-star general related to this subject that the Department of Justice was basically unable to prosecute because they were denied access to the operations. Next. Here's one that was also in this another facility as an extraterrestrial vehicle. He actually was there very close to it. This gentleman wants to come forward. He needs to be protected, and this is why we're calling for explicit witness protection and explicit pension and asset protection for these whistleblowers. Next. And this is just an indication of a type of electromagnetic system that actually can cloak any tank or any object that we've developed over the years, and he was read into this as well. Next. So there's another gentleman. I'm going to run through these very quickly. We'd be here for 30 hours if I didn't. I'm just giving you a tip of the iceberg, right? This is a guy who is at the Dugway Proving Grounds, very key facility, MS we call him. He worked for C. Martin Corporation, a contractor, and he was in a facility that had an extraterrestrial vehicle that was being studied by scientists. He knows the chief scientist involved. He has named that individual to us, and they can all be subpoenaed now. So this object was there in 2009. He didn't know the date of acquisition, but he thought it was fairly recent. Next. He also was read into and had the chief scientist show him the location, which we now have, of a DUM, deep underground military base, that is in the Dugway sector, so-called Avery sector, A-V-E-R-Y, and it has huge capacity for parking. You go in, and there's a vast underground complex in that location. That location has been handed off to investigators with the U.S. government. Next. This gives an illustration of the size of this. You could put easily on the platform that goes down the Air Force One. It's a very large elevator, goes down underground. Next. And then we have this gentleman. He was not long ago in the Nellis Range in the Nevada test site north of Nellis Air Force Base, and he, next slide, was on a retrieval team. Now let me explain how this guy got involved. He was recruited out of Fort Campbell to be somebody to be on a retrieval team with a top secret clearance to pick up when we have an accident with a helicopter or jet, because there's classified technology on those often. And our U2 pilot here will explain that perhaps. But the point is, he went from there, and that was preparatory to being on a retrieval team for this. So he was involved with this operation. It was a man-made, so-called alien reproduction vehicle, it's called by some people, or AT. A lot of people just call them advanced technology. It's a euphemism. But it's based on studying the electrogravitics and magnetic field propulsion systems of the interstellar vehicles that involve the science of quantum entanglement and, going, basically you want to go from one point in space and to another, say this is one point, this is another. You're not going through a straight line. You're folding space-time. That's how you're doing. And we're not going to do a physics lesson here. Had enough of that in pre-med. But anyway, so this is an object. And I'm not a physicist. We have a physicist here. But this object was retrieved because it became disabled. Some of these retrieval operations are not extraterrestrial, but they would like sometimes the public to think maybe it was, because the bigger secret, I will tell you right now, is not the extraterrestrial issue. It's these technologies, which an unsupervised and frankly, illegal operation have, which is a threat to the national security, period. This we will prove. And this is a bigger threat, the existence of these in the hands of unsupervised operations that have escaped the oversight of the President of the Office of the President and the Congress since 1956 to 1960. Hence Eisenhower's speech, beware the military-industrial complex. This is actually what he was talking about. I know people who have since passed away, like our witness, Stephen Lovekin, who was at the White House with Eisenhower, who said point blank, the president lost control of these projects and that he was very upset and angry about it, but these projects became so compartmentalized that he no longer could control them. So this is one. You can see there are rivets and what have you. And we'll go through this later after our fine gentlemen and whistleblowers speak. But I want to give you this overview really quickly. Next. So this is actually an extraterrestrial vehicle, a very large one that was at the Nellis North Range. We have the location of the helipad. It's Delta Force manned. This occurred back in that same era, around 2009, about 65 feet across. It's seamless, but it has sort of a clamshell part of it. There was a ramp that rolled out, like he said, like a roll-up that came out of it. And there was a ARV above it that was headed in lock. It was an electromagnetic lock on this object. I think it was stunned, and that's how it was brought down. This is not infrequent. Not every day, but not infrequent. I said over the last 80 years, at least 122 have come down. So there are helicopters. He was on the team to pick up debris. This one was, of course, intact. It began to pulse and operate and came back to life, as it were. And the entire group that was there basically were put in some kind of a stasis electromagnetically. Sounds like science fiction, teleported back to the helipad instantly. But before that happened, he had this meeting with two of these extraterrestrial biological entities, a male and a female, and this is a very accurate, according to the whistleblower, who needs to come forward when there's adult protection. They had no pinna, the ears outside, and had no hair, and there was a male and a female, and it was made very clear to him by these beings that they were completely non-hostile. All extraterrestrial civilizations are non-hostile. If they were hostile, the technologies they have would have been made quite clear to us in August of 1945. We'll get to this in a moment. So this, later he had an event when he tried to leave that command where there was a fake, what's called a programmed life form alien. These have been used in what you hear in the fabled lore of abductions and stuff in the UFO lore. This is actually a man-made creature, but it's not living per se. It has a covering that's skin-like. It tried to take him with one of these ARVs in command, and some people camouflaged in the ground near his truck. After he got out of this command, he was disgusted with what was happening. He no longer wanted to be part of that project, but they weren't happy he left. I told him, it's a miracle that you lived to tell this tale. And so what happened is that his pickup truck went into sort of complete lock, motor died because of this man-made UFO, UAP. He opened the door because he saw this creature, which he thought was an alien. It's not. And he hit it, it fell, he kicked it, and it split open this outer, and he saw the integrated circuits and fiber optics and what have you. This man I've dealt with quite a bit. He was ready to come to the aero skiff. He had a nasty encounter with people who threatened him directly. This is recent. And so we have not been able to bring him to the Aero Pentagon briefing. Next.